In a major sign of growing global influence of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Brazilian President Lula da Silva plans to call him on Thursday to discuss the high tariffs being imposed by the US on many countries of the global south, including India and Brazil. President Lula is also seeking more business and trade with India. DD India's correspondent Shobhan Saxena reports from Sao Paulo.
It faces 50% tariff on its exports to the US. President Lula da Silva of Brazil is refusing to call US President Donald Trump to discuss the issue. Instead, the Brazilian leader has said he is looking forward to enhancing trade relations with countries like India. On Wednesday, in an important announcement, President Lula said he would call Prime Minister Narendra Modi of India to discuss the tariff issue and also to develop a common strategy to tackle the pressure coming from Washington. President Lula's call with PM Modi is expected to be followed by discussions with other members of the BRICS group as Brazil tries to buffer the impact of rising US protectionism. The Brazilian leader enjoys a great personal chemistry with the Indian Prime Minister, who has visited Brazil twice in recent times, for the G20 summit in November 2024 and for the BRICS meeting in July this year. Brazil currently holds the BRICS presidency. It will be India's turn to host the summit in 2026. On Wednesday, in an interview with a news agency, President Lula said he saw no room for direct talks with President Trump, which he believes would turn into a humiliation for him. He also said that the President of the United States trying to dictate rules for a sovereign country like Brazil is unacceptable to him. On the other hand, President Lula is quite optimistic about close relations with India. During PM Modi's state visit to Brasilia on July 8 this year, President Lula had said his country aims to triple trade flows with India from $12 billion last year. Now all eyes of the world are on the Indian Prime Minister as he gets an important call from a strategic partner.
All right, to throw more light on this issue, we are joined in by a guest. We're joined in by Mr. Prabhu Dayal. He's former senior diplomat. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us on DD India this morning. We will have the discussion in detail, but to begin with, let's hear in the opening remarks from you. How do you read these tariffs and these sanctions by the US administration on India?
Well, good morning, and thanks for having me on your show. Let me say that Donald Trump's latest outburst against India is coercive diplomacy dressed up as trade policy. But he has miscalculated. This is not some client state like Pakistan that will buckle under pressure. This is India. And as you mentioned, he signed an executive order imposing an additional 25% tariff on Indian imports, and said that these additional tariffs are because India is purchasing Russian oil, and that will raise the total tariff on Indian imports to the United States to 50%, which is among the highest tariff rates imposed in the world. Now, he forgot that his own country is also importing quite a lot from Russia. In fact, India has maintained that its relationship with Russia stands on its own merits. And India has also pointed out that the United States continues to import from Russia uranium hexafluoride for its nuclear industry, palladium for its EV industry, fertilizers, as well as chemicals. So India has made it very clear that it will take all necessary measures to safeguard its national interests and economic security. India, has also said that it is extremely unfortunate that the United States should choose to impose additional tariffs on India for actions that several other countries are also doing in their national interest. They are taking steps in their national interest. As you mentioned, China has been spared by Trump, although China has been buying much more Russian oil than India has been. So, in a nutshell, I think, President Trump demonstrates that there are no permanent friends, there are only permanent interests, except that, in his view, American interests are Trump's own interests.
Yes.
He has pursued a policy of putting his own personal interest above his own national interest, above global interest, and above the interests of humanity. Let me
Right.
mention that the United States is a very big importer of Indian stuff, pharmaceuticals and textiles, leatherware, footwear, machinery, uh, a lot of food stuff. And at the same time, Bloomberg has reported that the highest number of smartphones which are being imported into the United States are Apple smartphones made in India.
Yes.
So what will happen is that all this will hurt the American consumers. If tariffs are imposed to the extent of 50%, then the American consumers' interest will also be very badly affected. So I
Yes.
think that President Trump has not done the right thing at all, and it is very coercive diplomacy, as I said at the beginning.
All right, so you're calling this coercive diplomacy, but at the same time, now India has been subject to these tariffs owing to the purchase of Russian oils. At the same time, we also have another country, Brazil, which is also facing 50% tariffs because of the US objections of the prosecution of former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro. In today's times, when the world is witnessing such geopolitical instability, to what extent is this justified? Bringing, mixing together political interests of a country and the business interests of a country. You did call this coercive diplomacy. This kind of a diplomacy, my way or no way. In today's times, to what extent is this justified, clashing political interests with the business interests or, economical interests of a country?
It is not justified at all. In fact, President Trump has demonstrated that it may take years to build a relationship, but it takes no time to wreck it.
Yes.
It may be recalled that when Prime Minister Modi had visited Washington in February this year, Trump had called him his great friend, and the two countries had set a target of enhancing their bilateral trade to $500 billion by 2030. However, less than 6 months have passed by since then, and due to the Trump tariffs, the trade relationship is hitting rock bottom, and the structure of the whole bilateral relationship is also greatly threatened. This is, in fact, a stunning reversal in a relationship that has gone from strength to strength over the past 2 decades due to efforts of successive governments in India and the United States to bring about convergence on global issues and promote bilateral goodwill and a relationship which is beneficial to both sides. Now, let me also mention that within days of claiming he doesn't care about India's ties with Russia, the American president has begun threatening sanctions and punitive tariffs, all while also mocking our economy and calling it a dead economy and referring to our tariffs as obnoxious tariffs. So this is very strong language, which doesn't, of course, befit a head of state, and it is going to do a lot of damage to the bilateral ties. I think this may appear to be his way of telling India that he wants to protect Ukrainian sovereignty. But, in the past, he has hardly been seen to be doing that. I think that he's just arm twisting India into accepting his terms because he pursues a very transactional policy. He's a businessman. And
Yes.
in business, you pursue a transactional policy which is intended as a zero-sum game. That means you win all and the other side loses all. But in diplomacy, that is not the approach. In diplomacy, the policy is always win-win. There has to be gain for both the sides. And in fact, all along, we have been emphasizing this in our interaction with the United States, and they have been receptive. The policies of both sides have been directed towards bringing about beneficial results, bringing about the sort of win-win approach in our interaction. But now all that seems to be down the drain just because of the policies of a very transactional nature which he has been pursuing.
All right, so we'll continue this conversation here, but at this point, we're joined in by our correspondent Akshay Dongre. Akshay, as a reporter, I would want you to gauge for us to what extent will India have a bearing on its exports when you talk of the US imposing 50% tariffs?
Well,
which are the
Preeti,
particular sectors?
obviously-
Which are the particular sectors which will face the brunt?
Well, obviously, Preeti, a couple of things. Since India's exports to US are vast, there will be some impact. But we have been reiterating this thing, and even the government has been saying that we are a huge country. We are, in fact, the largest country when it comes to population. So the goods that are going to the US, if they do not go to the US and somehow integrated into our market as well, so we can absorb the shocks. So yes, obviously there is going to be a setback to many of the people who have been dependent solely on doing business with the US. These are certain things that happen when there is a trade war and when a country is armed twisting your nation. So there are going to be certain setbacks. However, the major sectors like pharma and electronics, especially the Apple phones that are being made here and other electronic goods have been exempted. So that takes out a huge chunk of exported goods that are going to the US already exempted from the tariffs that have been implemented by Donald Trump. That also shows the gaps as far as his policies are concerned, because while Donald Trump has been pressurizing Apple to move the manufacturing facilities from China and especially now India back to the US, the entire concept of economics that Donald Trump has an understanding of was pointed out to him that's just not possible to do unless the phone prices, or if you do that, the phone prices will be shooting up to over 3,500 for the top variants of the iPhone. That would have been even unaffordable for many of the Americans. So the situation was brought under control when Donald Trump was made to understand that there are certain things that have to be exempted. So that also shows his lack of understanding of the entire affair. Second, as far as impact on India is concerned, India can obviously look for other markets. We have just signed an FTA with the UK. We have signed FTA with several other nations now. And then, as far as trade is concerned, it's moving in a very robust direction with other nations. But the kind of immaturity that the US government has showed to India and to the rest of the world by this arbitrary implementation of tariffs has certainly damaged the reputation of the US as a market and US as a trade partner, as an ally. So it's a country. In 4 years, the president will change, the policies will change, and there is no coherence. So the next president can do and undo anything that you have done or invested in the last 10, 15, 20 years. So that will be a major dent to the trust that the US economy had, the reliability, the credibility of the US market. But when it comes to India, yes, we have learned a lesson in both geopolitics as well as business from Donald Trump. So certainly we will be taking rather steps in our national interest, in the interest of our people. And as far as other things are concerned, clearly there is a hypocrisy that we have seen, with Donald Trump trying to make an example of India, to arm twist both India, China, and Russia. Consistently threatening the BRICS countries over a BRICS currency. So there are a range of issues where neither Donald Trump has showed any kind of statesmanship nor maturity to deal with such delicate matters. Back to you.
Yes, a very important point put forth by Akshay. I'll take that forward to our guest. Sir, Akshay did talk of how Donald Trump has repeatedly targeted the BRICS countries. Having said that, Brazil, India are the countries of the global south that have faced the maximum tariff, sanctions by Trump. Added to that, on our screens also, we had been continuously showing, graphics of how China is somewhat exempt, or the effect of the US tariff sanctions have been faced little by China, given the 90-day window also that was given to it. And also the overall the tariffs have been at 30%. Put all this together, would you also agree to this fact that Donald Trump is, pointedly trying to attack the countries in the global south? One. Added to that, specifically singling out India and Brazil for that matter, does this also show the growing clout India has among the countries of the global south at present?
Well, you're absolutely right, and I must add that I entirely agree with the comments which Akshay Dongre made. Incidentally, I have a soft corner for him because my son's name is also Akshay, and I entirely agreed with everything that Akshay Dongre said during his comments. Now, let me also mention that Donald Trump has not just singled out India and Brazil. He has been doing this to a whole host of his own partners. Look at what he did with Canada, who's been its closest neighbor. He's wanted Canada to become the 51st state of the United States. Imagine saying that. Then he didn't spare the other NATO countries. He didn't spare the European Union. So his policy has been one which sort of is very unpredictable and has got the whole world in disarray. I think there is a shattering of harmony all across the globe because of Trump's policy. Now, let me say that he's also totally unpredictable and plays to the interests of what is conceived, thought of as his business, his family's business. Now, let me mention that in his first term, Trump's first tweet on 1st January 2018 was about Pakistan. He said the United States had foolishly given Pakistan more than $33 billion in aid over the last 15 years, and in return, Pakistan had given back only lies and deceit. Now, in his second term, he's singing a totally different tune about Pakistan. He is being so friendly with them. And according to all reports, this is because of the fact that the Trump family has developed close business interests in Pakistan, both in the
Right.
sphere of cryptocurrency and also mineral mining. So, because of his family's personal interest, business interest, his entire approach to Pakistan has changed. And similarly, his approach to a whole host of other countries, including India, has changed. Let me mention that until recently, the US India strategic partnership had reached unprecedented heights. India and the US had steadily deepened their partnership across multiple sectors, which were driven by shared interests, democratic values, and strong people to people ties. And these areas included defense, technology, space, semiconductors, biotechnology, cyber security, telecommunications, you name it. Now, the partnership was all embracing and growing from strength to strength. Suddenly, with his sort of actions, the tariffs, and the very spiteful language that he has been using, he has brought the entire relationship crashing down. And as I said earlier, it takes years, in fact, decades to build a relationship, but it takes no time to destroy it. And
Right.
unfortunately, that is what he has done.
All right. At this point, I'll go back to Akshay. Akshay, help us understand the effects of these tariff sanctions on the overall bearing it will have on the Indian economy. Though we do believe that in the overall terms, this will not have a much bearing on the domestic economy, on the GDP numbers in particular, but in the way forward, what approach can also be taken forth by India?
Well, India is a huge country, Preeti, and if we have seen anything in the last 2 days, as far as observation of the stock market is concerned, is that the market has been absorbing all these shocks that Donald Trump administration may have been thinking will shake the Indian market. So even they are surprised that the Sensex and the Nifty have remained largely stable. In fact, most of the market has remained in green, which means that it did not see any kind of crash. So what the U.S. administration was expecting, that India will come on its knees if we keep on implementing tariffs. Then that totally has failed. That has in fact collapsed that entire notion of India, coming and running back to the US asking for a deal. that is something that a businessman like Donald Trump may have done business with other parties. But if you talk to a country like India, if you're dealing with a country like India, that is the fastest growing economy in the world, fastest growing major economy in the world, then you have to have a certain degree of decorum. You cannot dehyphenate India, Pakistan, and try to use every tactic in the book to bring India to the talking table, or rather to force a deal onto India. That is just not going to happen. You called Munir to have lunch with you. India did not say a thing. You have been using derogatory language. You have been putting Indians, in planes, military planes, handcuffed and sending them back to India. India still wanted good relations with the US, because we saw US as a country that shares India's values of democracy. But what we have seen in the last few days is hardly any kind of return of that respect. Any kind of there was no mutual respect. There was no respect to India's trade, India's agriculture sector, India's farmers, and all of these things that US wants and access to. And India said enough is enough. So we are not going to risk the well-being of our farmers, of our economy, just to please one man and just to sort of get a free pass to do business with the US. The world is much bigger than US. The US should come to realize this. And the kind of tariffs that we are seeing, the kind of instability, change of decisions that we are seeing, is also a sign that the US market is also shrinking. The US economy is shrinking. The country that could, perhaps 30 years back do business with any country in the world without any kind of insecurity, US market and economy is not the same anymore. China is rising, India is rising, Brazil is rising, the entire BRICS is coming together stronger. And that really has given sleepless nights to many of the people who always had a notion of Western superiority when it comes to the economics. And this entire reshaping of the world order is perhaps the reason why these kind of actions are being taken by the US administration at this point in time, along with rather coupled with the short-sightedness of the US government too.
All right, Akshay. Thank you for joining in with those details, and I'll take that forward to our guest also, sir. When we talk of, the GSP status, the US GSP status of India, it was earlier also terminated in March 2019, but then again it was revoked in June 2019. That was in 2019, but this is 2025. When we talk of Trump tenure 2.0, how do you see that change drastically from the way, he was the 45th US president during his first tenure, and now in 2025, when we've seen geopolitical changes witnessed across the world, how we've seen, centers of power emerging from different parts of the world, given the global south, or for that matter, Asia. Put all this together, the very dream of Donald Trump to make America great again. Every world leader wants his respective country to shine, to progress. But at the same time, to what extent this is just the beginning of, the Trump tenure 2.0. It's a long way ahead. Put all this together, how do you see Trump tenure 2.0 progress from here on, given the various geopolitical, challenges the world is facing, and also at the same time, countries like India are also putting forth their clout on the global page?
Well, let me first make a comment about how I see Indo-US relations shaping out in Trump 2.0. I think that the impact of Trump's second term on the US-India relationship remains simply unpredictable. The relationship appeared to be very robust, but now it appears very fragile. So India will have to be prepared for any sort of action, any sort of alliance that Donald Trump might try to shape for America. And in this particular context, it is important that the impact which his policies are having on the geopolitical situation of South Asia has to be kept under very close watch. By nurturing a close relationship with a rogue state like Pakistan, which is an out-and-out terrorist state, Donald Trump is making a mistake because, as Hillary Clinton had once said, if you nurture snakes in your garden, they're going to bite you. And to take the analogy forward, if you develop such a close relationship with a terrorist state like Pakistan, it is going to hurt you sooner or later. Pakistan is a very mischievous country. It will misuse its relationship with the United States. Now, as regards the internal situation within the United States, I think media reports indicate that there is growing uncertainty about the economy. There is rising unemployment. There is increasing fear of recession. And there are many factors which are responsible for this. But of course, the uncertainty created in the global situation by Trump's policies is also responsible for creating uncertainty within the United States. As regards some of these tariffs, let me mention that the business interests of many of the smaller enterprises in the United States are also being affected. In fact, a number of small businesses who are importing goods have filed cases against the Trump administration because the increased tariffs have led to a downfall in their capacity to sell, and they were ending up with lots of unsold stocks, and their businesses were going down, so they filed cases. So there is a lot of anxiety, there is a lot of uncertainty, both in the international arena and within the United States, about how these policies are going to affect people. People are very scared all over the globe and including in the United States of America. Let me also mention one thing, that India is a country which has a big standing in its own right. Uh, President Trump may have said that India is a dead economy, but everyone knows how terribly wrong he is on that, because India is the world's fifth largest economy and it is moving rapidly towards becoming the fourth largest economy. India has a very big domestic market. India has global alliances, and these have been shaped by our leadership. Prime Minister Modi's leadership role has been acknowledged globally. He has been given a number of awards by different countries because he is seen as a person who looks at global interests. He has promoted the idea of Vasudeva Kutumbakam, the world is one family. So this divisive policy which President Trump is following is certainly not going to strike the right chord with anybody. And I'm not surprised that Brazil is very upset, and Brazil has sent a very, very sympathetic and friendly message to India. There is a lot of possibility of India working with a whole host of other countries, and India is already doing that. There are many, many markets which can be opened up. But above all, let me mention that the Indian market is itself big. And it is time that Indians stand up and say, be Indian, buy Indian. We must use as much of our own products, strengthen our economy, and that will go a long way towards strengthening our country.
Yes. All right, so we'll end this discussion, we'll end this conversation here. Thank you so much for joining us on DD India this morning.
Thank you.